you're not going to be able to voluntarily wrest the data from the people who are creating it. And when I say that, I mean Facebook is a perfect example. They do create all that data, even though it's all user-generated content. And there's a bit of an uproar because they've, at least in the United States, because they've made so much money off of their users' data, and the users really haven't understood that that's happening, and now they do. So of course it's kind of like, well, why am I not getting paid for my data?
Data is the new oil, but what do we do with it? Passive data aggregation is the norm, but what should companies do with it to maximize their verticals? Moderated by Miguel Francis Santiago, The Future Is Now Media Network. Josh Lawler, Zuber Lawler, Beatrice Collet, Chiliz, Ethan Ng, BiKi.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So in this cyberlution that we're entering in, what we do in my profession is we try to expose the importance of doing good as we innovate and try to scale the ways that we've been so accustomed to. And for now, it is truly a centralized way that we've been accustomed to. And I think knowledge is power, and data is indeed the new oil. And let's discuss in this short 20-minute time frame, what can we do in order to better these dogmas of data-driven world that we're entering in? How can we decentralize the locus of power, and how do we see that shift taking place? Is this going to be an easy shift? Is this going to be a hard shift? How is the government going to react as more and more companies like Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook are being recreated in a decentralized, perhaps even tokenized aspect, where they give the control back to the people? Josh, let's start with you, please. What do you think?
Well, I think what's going to happen is what's going to happen, easy or hard. There's certainly a large grab from the existing enterprise providers. Microsoft just had their announcement a couple days ago to kind of co-opt distributed ledger within their own kind of internal systems. So Microsoft Azure, in Microsoft's case, kind of a global intranet. At the same time, there are certainly more decentralized providers, and one of our clients, StoreCoin, is a great example of it, that are putting together platforms where application developers can choose what they do with the data, and they might give it back to their users and allow their users to monetize it, for instance. At the end of the day, I think information wants to be free, and it will get out to the public and the world.
And Ethan, in the case of exchanges, and of course the hot topic of is DEX going to succeed? Is this really the right way of holding those sacred keys? In your case, how is that happening for you, and in what you do?
Hello. Yeah. So I think like this for your question is regarding DEX, right? Yeah. So for us, we are a centralized exchange, and then so we have VPNs, mJump servers, and we need multi access to go into our servers at any point of time. In terms of our wallet, we actually store only just 5% in our cold wallet at any point of time. And when it comes to the cold wallet, my CTO is actually very anxious on a daily basis, because that's where all our customers' money is at. So we actually have multiple access. So when there's an exception, there's actually an alarm that will ring to everybody's phone. Yeah. So for that aspect, that's the countermeasure that we actually have. And with regards to DEX, I think we probably might be a little bit too early for this conversation. Years ahead. Yeah.
But what do you think in the progress of the way exchanges work and the way that private data is being stored, kept? Again, we have so many leaks happening, so many hacks. It's I think billions daily that are being leaked out. And again, very young, of course, the industry overall. We're in the baby steps. What do you think that particular exchange community is going to have to do in order to secure that data in a better way than it is now?
All right, so, on a daily basis, we get at least 20 attacks, right? So when we have lesser than that, we find an exception, like what's happening, is there a public holiday or something, right? Back then, when I was in Huobi Global, there was at least 50 attacks as well. And in the last few months, I've traveled to San Francisco, Japan, Korea as well. I've visited different security firms as well to look at this. I think there are some brilliant ideas that's just coming out in the last few months, and that's actually very interesting. We are taking a very conservative approach towards this as well. There's no practice that is actually perfect. Everybody's doing different practices to see how they can actually better protect. And all right, so a lot of our users are actually from the Chinese markets. And for the second layer of the recapture, we actually tried like 8 different methods because there's so many attacks. And then we have actually resorted to using unique Chinese characters in our recapture. And that is like perfect for us. I mean, this is just an example of the extent that we go to protect our new to crypto users. Yeah.
That sounds exciting indeed. Now, Chiliz, Beatrice, and that sort of, let's say, platform for mass adoption through something people love and enjoy. What sort of dealings with data have you guys been encountering?
We just launched our app on Android 2 days ago, so it's just the beginning for us, and iOS coming very soon. Basically, I think what we forget a lot when we look at big data is that it really needs to have a purpose, and about 90% of the data collected today is not being used. It's just stored somewhere, but is not being used. So I think what's really important is to know for what purpose you want to use that big data. And I guess for us, when we look at sports and football in our case, for us, big data, the purpose would be to know where is our fan base. So when you look at Juventus fans, there are more fans of Juventus outside of Italy than in Italy. There is a big community in Asia as well. So big data can help us in that way to know where they are, what are their needs, their preferences, and how we can help them out in that way. So we can personalize the experience, the VIP experiences that any fan of any football team in the world can have.
You said it, the purpose of data and why, just like the reason why I started this panel with Brock saying those particular words, why are we here? What's the intention behind any platform that's in this industry, because it's all extremely data-driven. And Josh, I know you're currently speaking to a couple or several clients that are using some new methods you mentioned in that regard.
Yes, and I won't get too terribly technical on it, but I think that there's a really wonderful point being illustrated here, which is that not all data is the same. Any more than lubricating oil and high-octane oil are the same, and there's different purposes. So, the financial data that you're going to find on an exchange, highly sensitive, and of course, if it gets out, then there's potential to damage people, greatly. On the other hand, when you've got data about who's following what sports team, that's significantly less critical to be able to, it still should be protected, but it's not the same thing. But possibly users want to keep their own data and say, I'm a huge Duke Blue Devil fan, go Devils, and I may not want the world to see that. On the other hand, you've got things like in the United States, the Center for Disease Control, and I actually would love to make sure that the Center for Disease Control gets absolutely all the data that it possibly can. So it's a little bit, the right tools for the job.
But so, what do you think? Again, if we go back to the major question, the locus of control, and there are people saying that owning your own data, it'd be great. That's what the industry talks about, but I know a few people, I'm not going to name who, let's just say they are maximalists in the Bitcoin maximalist arena, and they believe that this is just a fairy tale. We're never really going to own our own data, and we're really never going to have that control, because that knowledge is power, power is control, and so on. What do you think? Can we achieve this shift of this locus of control?
I think you have to follow the money. And the answer to the question is, you're not going to be able to voluntarily wrest the data from the people who are creating it. And when I say that, I mean Facebook is a perfect example. They do create all that data, even though it's all user-generated content. And there's a bit of an uproar because they've, at least in the United States, because they've made so much money off of their users' data, and the users really haven't understood that that's happening, and now they do. So of course it's kind of like, well, why am I not getting paid for my data? But at the end of the day, there wouldn't be anything if Facebook wasn't running it. Now, Facebook could choose to allow its users to have the data, and a number of companies that are growing up now are allowing that choice to happen. They're providing the technology, and a lot of it's on distributed ledger technology, where you can opt into the idea that if I'm following the Duke Blue Devils, for instance, I might make that something that the NCAA is allowed to be aware of, and I might get paid 5 cents or whatever to do that. On the other hand, Chiliz may not give me that option. They may just collect what they've got. And as a user, I'm kind of out of luck on that, and that's the way it is.
And would you say that is one of the ways to synthesize the data properly?
Well, synthesizing is tough.
So that you're a good stickler on the data. You're not looked at as a bad actor.
Well, and that's why I was saying economics. It's marketing. I mean, if you've got a choice between Facebook A on one side that owns all of your data and monetizes it, and that's all there is to it, and Facebook B on the other side that leaves you with some of the monetization and gives you some of the control over who's going to say things, most users, again, at least in the United States, are going to choose Facebook B, all other things being equal. So it becomes economics. It becomes product-driven.
So I guess the answer is really to create a powerful platform that is attractive, and then use that data with a good purpose.
Yeah.
Would you say Chiliz is in that spectrum?
It's very early stage for us. I mean, we are just now create all our user base and so on. But I think we're going to have to be careful as well to all misinterpretations that can happen with big data. I mean, today we have the potential with all. I mean, we can create so many exabytes of information at lightning speed. So we just have to be careful on how we interpret the results and so on. I mean, do really data show exact facts or the truth, or does the result is more making us feel more comfortable and successful and so on? So we need to be very careful on that as well. I mean, misuse as well and misinterpretation of all of that.
So what are some of the other, perhaps, Ethan, lessons that we can look at or learn from again, the centralized society, data-driven, in not repeating those mistakes in the decentralized, data-driven society that we're building now? What would you, maybe some pointers you can throw out there? Or?
So, like, everywhere I travel to, the most often there's a lot of people asking me the same question, like, which are the countries that BiKi is actually targeting? And so basically everybody's asking where are we going to localize? And our approach is a lot different. We look from our data and where most of our organic traffic is coming from, and also where our users are based, our active users as well. And then from there, we will look from this data to specifically target those countries to localize in, right? So in terms of globalization, that's how we are attempting it.
Josh, what would you add to that?
What I think would be a wonderful use case if it could happen would be actually scrubbing away disinformation. One of the things that potentially, I'm not entirely sure how it would work out. I'm not enough of a techie, but particularly in the United States right now in politics, I mean, there's a lot of discussion over things that have targeted particular populations to vote in a particular way that have been very much planted and not really true. And at this point, it's impossible to understand from the various news sources what is actually correct. And there's definitely a data play, with some type of machine learning that can scrub that. And again, I know some of the larger providers who have taken a lot of criticism are working on those types of things, but at the same time, as long as it's centralized, you really never know what slant you're being given. So that would be I think from a greater good perspective, one of the things I would really love to see.
That's an awesome point. And I mean, we're missing Tufi Salih, but he didn't make it. He was supposed to be on the previous panel. And I mean, this leads us into deepfake AI and just the amazing opportunities and the evil use for that technology in driving data and disinformation, misinformation. And, you know, for me as someone who actually has worked at RT, Russia Today, and eventually I had my own crypto show that I was able to do there and get away from politics. I have to say, no news source, whether it's CNN or you know, RT or Al Jazeera or any of that, no news source is unbiased. Editorial policy is editorial policy everywhere, and it plays to the certain interests of the certain news source everywhere. So no media is really independent, and to have a cleanup mechanism for that, perhaps using you know, AI or some sort of a data system would be amazing, and a great use case. So yeah. Again, some people say that as this shift comes, we will have uprisings, revolutions, perhaps even violence, when people realize that they want to own their own data. And how can we have a peaceful transition in that regard? What sort of perhaps education, or should we get more people coming to these conferences to listen about the importance of owning your own data?
I think people really need to figure out what they want to do without knowing that they're doing it for the most case. I would love to see everybody attend these conferences, but the reality is that that's not going to happen for most of the population. You know, in many countries, I don't believe bloody revolution is really possible, and I don't think it would happen over data ownership, possibly data access. And you know, if you look at a lot of the dictatorships in the world, you know, one of the key things is, you know, none of the information is available. Forget it being slanted; it's just not there. So, you know, as you stated, knowledge is power. And from that perspective, in order to have more basic human rights in a lot of cases, there needs to be more freedom of access. But I don't know that I see people, you know, as long as they can go about their lives and they have food and shelter and families and, you know, love. I'm going to be a little bit corny about it, but I don't think they're going to rise up over, you know, not having command over their blog necessarily. And
that's why realizing that Bitcoin at the end of the day is also data, and decentralized financial ownership of your data is ownership of your value and money, and maybe that could change the world for the better. So we're all here for a good reason. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.